that, we're not going to, okay, cool, my meeting's being recorded. I don't know if you all just heard that, but I'm going to continue. What's existed in the past is some novel, I'd say, toy-based learning. You could get several different kits and projects that in of themselves are brilliant, but their value is finite. It's got a start point and an end point. And for you as an educator, it's not just deciding whether or not that's enough for your learners, but it's where does that start, what prior knowledge is required, and where is that going from here? What we take pride in is the fact that we first and foremost value our curriculum above all else. There is an exponential learning curve. You do start with the granularities of what is block-based coding. It is a coding language developed by MIT to make text-based coding more ingestible. If you're not familiar with text-based coding, and I say the term text-based coding or even coding, you immediately think the matrix. You immediately think a lot of syntax that doesn't make sense, and you think, okay, cool, I'm already scared. What they've done is really condensed it into block-based code, click and drag, drop, so that you can start to learn your sequencing and start to learn patterns and recognitions, different inputs and outputs without the complexities of text-based code. Then when you do eventually leave into text-based code and you toggle between, it's a lot more ingestible. You understand how you got there. And then if you're really terrified, you head back to the block-based. Oh, okay, cool. That's my opening statement. And then jump between the two. We talk about your, I'd say, niche text languages. And I only say niche because not all text-based coding is created equal. Some is really diverse and can execute a lot of things, like, for example, Python, industry-leading language, whereas your HTML, your CSS, your Java that I mentioned previously is maybe really, really, really good at one or two things, but you'd really struggle to, for example, program an Arduino if you tried to do it with HTML. If you achieve it, fantastic, give us a call, that's awesome. But you'd be a lot better served doing C-based programming, like the Arduino's own C-based language, C#, C++, when you're trying to really cover the base of text-based before you go and specialize into various different spaces. Oh, that's not working. There we go. So too with your hardware. Gareth has a double-edged sword of a very exciting and also very nerve-wracking job of stress testing all of the products that we decide to go to market with, because there's no point in going with anything that doesn't actually serve the curriculum and come back to it. And I'll always stress to educators and teachers that if you are going to push towards some sort of solution in acquisition and hardware, do so thinking, does this serve the curriculum and the lesson plan and what I'm trying to achieve, or is it really shiny and cool? Shiny and cool has its place and its space, maybe in a club or an extramural, but if you're really trying to emphasize the exponential growth curve that your kids are going through with their coding and robotics comprehension, make sure that that serves the curriculum. And Gareth does have the headache of doing that, saying, okay, cool, is it fantastic? Will it work? Is it affordable? And does it serve the purpose that we're trying to address? And these are the 6 streams in which we try to do it. But I would say that no matter what you have at your school, take a look at our growth curves. I can even send this presentation to Tal, who she can then distribute to this list, so that you can start to look at, okay, cool, they start with toy-based learning, basic computational thinking skills, activities. They move forward to the microbit. It's an excellent blend between text-based learning, but not overwhelming your, I'd say, intermediate phase with electronic circuitry and theory. Then we do get into first principles. The way I describe first principles to everybody is that the trends will rise and fall, but a few things stay the same. If I crack open my laptop, crack open my keyboard, crack open the cell phone, crack open even the watches now, you'll start to see a lot of stuff looks very similar. There will be microcontrollers, there will be semiconductors, there will be wires and inputs and outputs. There's buttons. Buttons are universal with the keyboard or the watch or the devices that we have at our disposal. So whatever we're teaching, we want to be teaching that theory, because even if a microcontroller changes or a project comes along, arguably the fundamentals are going to stay the same. And that's what we want our kids to leave with at the end of the day. I did threaten you guys with talking about my why, so that's where I'm going to hop into now. And this was the presentation that I had planned for you guys today, the Everything Robotics by Jonathan Duplessis. And just in a brief overview, covering what we cover in terms of our teacher training and support, our web IDEs, so that you can have one integrated environment. Kasturi, hearing about some of the developments that we're doing may be exciting. Since we last spoke, she sees new slides every year. Our LMS system, having video-based tutorials, we find that robotics and coding is a very visual subject, and having that resource to rewind, fast forward, focus on key areas. If you're a kid who excels with coding, having the robotics be a bit more difficult, it's nice so that you can review and self-paced learning through those modules, or vice versa. If you find mechanical engineering to be a breeze, but then you find that Python is just intelligible, being able to go over it again is fantastic. And then, of course, the very, very genesis of what we were trying to achieve, which is that curriculum from grade R to 12. We had our facilitator guides, and I do see some questions. I promised to take a look. There's 2 there. The curriculum from grade 1 to matric with lesson plans, assessments, and exams. CAPS aligned. A lot of you will know or have kept eyes on the CAPS drafting. And what I cannot stress enough is that we are CAPS aligned in the sense that as long as it's going through minor tweaks and iterations, it technically isn't an overhaul. We're watching it with every eye we have in the academic department to make sure that we always align and course adjust and do what we feel is industry relevant moving forward, so that if CAPS is a concern to your school, if you do have to be compliant, knowing that you're not partnering with a service provider that's going to be against that. And then, of course, our kits at various different streams, going from toy-based learning all the way through to the FET phase, artificial intelligence, building your own video game consoles. Again, if you would like to have a separate phone call where I talk to you about all of the things that we do, or maybe the Q&As at the end, I'll happily go through more of the project examples. We are in over 150 schools, plus minus 30,000 students, give or take. We do have a school or 2 in Namibia and Botswana, which is wonderful, and we're looking at overseas. So overseas competitions will always be fun. So why robotics and coding? I think I've covered it very broad stroke with Gareth's story. I think before I move on, actually not with Gareth's story, with the genesis of those 2, and I'll talk about mine, I'll quickly address maybe some questions as soon as it opens.
Don't
Confessionally, I'm clicking it and I see nothing.
I'm answering them for you. So the one question is regards to certificates. So if you would like a certificate, you are welcome to email me and I'll create one and send one to you, just so that you have proof that you attended this evening.
Oh, cool.
And then someone asked, how is the alignment against the CAPS done and ensured? So that's a you question, Jonathan.
No problem. Actually, I shouldn't have left the old slide. So what we do is we take a look at the CAPS document. Let's go find it in this presentation. And what we do is we have our academic team make sure that whatever we're covering in terms of the, let's say, project and theory is covered in various different aspects. Starting with the basics, you want to make sure that your notional time is on song. It's no good providing you with a solution that's going to, cover 10 hours worth of curriculum when you need plus minus 40, depending on when you're going. Again, this will go through redrafts. The FET phase currently doesn't have a proposed plan because until you can use the subject to apply for university, we're not going to touch the space. But what we have is, I like to call it the Constantina model. What Gareth and Rajesh have successfully pulled off is having way too much to do and way too many options. So our average is 40 hours, but you can Constantina that up to 120 hours if you're one of those lucky schools that has 4 hours of club extramural space afforded to robotics during the week. Or in some special cases, I had a school this year that had to condense their entire robotics and coding curriculum into a single term. So then what our academic team does is they go and take a look at the learning outcomes and see what is critical to remain CAPS aligned and still have delivered. Obviously, with more time, we're afforded more flexibility, and I see Q&As now flooding through. I'm going to finish the CAPS direction. Not too much has changed here, except for the inclusion of a 5th pillar, I do believe, and I could stand corrected, but we can always hook you up with our academic team and making sure that we cover in broad strokes what is mandated. Sometimes what is mandated in terms of a learning outcome and hardware and the actual exercises don't always add up. But I don't want to be some of the solution. We want to be all of the solution. Luckily, when we started our company with robotics and coding being the focus, robotics and coding and the algorithms, those initial 2 pillars covered largely. With the internet e-communication skills and the application skills, we've made sure that we include that into our curriculum so that we cover as much as possible to remain compliant. What I can say is that we do publish that list of what we align to. So if you are interested, I can send it through to you and show you the maximum amount of compliances at each level and what still needs to be covered. And I think over a certain percentage means that we are aligned and therefore applicable and usable in that space. And what isn't aligned is being aligned, which is fantastic. The key clauses that we identified as our major sell point when we set out on this venture is that schools offering coding robotics must have a well-equipped coding robotics lab. You must have your own resources and you must have your own service. So to me, that's a big problem because it's saying do it yourself, but you better do it, which is where we come in to try and assist with that entire space. In a nutshell, if there are learning outcomes, we need to cover those learning outcomes. And if there are different levels, we need to cover those different levels of comprehension. And that's how we try to ensure our alignment. But if you would like to request supporting documentation, I'm very happy to make sure that gets sent through. Okay, cool. If there's another question on that topic, happy to address it. Otherwise, happy to continue with the Shop Schools PowerPoint.
Okay, Jonathan, just a quick question here. So the question is, can coding and robotics, is it still in the piloting stage, must be added to the school timetable, or will it be integrated with tech? The same as a follow-on, is it integrated into the school day, or will it be a club form as an extramural?
So at the moment, with the pilot schools that I've been introduced to, they are being given mandates to introduce it within the timetable. And obviously timetables are a precious resource. We only have a finite amount of hours during the day, unless we start to really push the ante into the afternoons, which isn't a solution feasible for most parents, if not teachers. We don't want more time. We want to be more deliberate. From the pilot schools that I've worked with thus far, they've included in the curriculum. And then the overwhelming consensus is that the plan, let's say, sorry to not avoid ambiguity, is to have a full curriculum at least up until grade 10 by 2025 as a subject. When we talk about drafting and redrafting, one of the key issues is what falls away, what gets integrated. But a lot of my first adopters are saying, okay, cool, I'm going to involve it. And then what we do something is called subject integration. So we look at your learning outcomes in IT, we look at your learning outcomes maybe in design technology, if still offered, especially with the littlies, it's a bit easier to adapt in curriculum perspective. We make sure that we cover enough that you can, for example, borrow half an hour from this subject, half an hour from that subject, and boom, come up with some notional time. Yeah, your guess is as good as mine as what's going to be pulled away. Unless my academic team knows otherwise, but to my knowledge right now, not yet decided where that time's coming from.
Thanks, it's very helpful. And then Bianca's asking, how can we get the resources? So Bianca, what I'll do is I will share a link to Resolute's website so that you can go and take a look and see what they've got available. And then if you want to rewatch the YouTube video, that link will be sent to you on Friday as well. Are there other resources you mentioned that I missed?
Our CAPS alignment documentation. I think we do some overviews just so that you can see where we are compliant, depending on your stream or let's say phase. And then also our product catalogs, additional resources. Yeah, I've got a lot of homework, so it's free to share. I would say that at the end of the presentation today, I'll also throw up my email address. Feel free to email me if you guys are interested in hearing about, our particular solutions or our research, or to get on a call. I do like over encumbering my academic team with meetings. So very happy to get them on a call. My head of academics is one of my favorite people, Caro, and she's brilliant at what she does. So yeah, we can absolutely do that. Cool.
Sounds good.
All right, awesome. I'm sure I'm looking for more questions later, which will be fantastic. Why robotics and coding? If you think towards industry growth, job creation, we also talk about a key term called the fourth industrial revolution. And this is actually something that is really championed by Gareth again. So if you're still with me, Bud, if not, you missed a shout out. But one of the major things that he demystified for me when I started with the company is what is an industrial revolution. We hear about the 4IR, but a lot of times, again, another sales term that we're kind of bouncing around everybody. I decided in this presentation, I'd throw up a definition. An industrial revolution is a rapid major change in an economy marked by the general introduction of power-driven machinery or by important changes in the prevailing types and methods of use of such machines. Sorry, Gareth, I don't know if by heart, Bud, but there you have it. In a nutshell, and I think this is the correct slide. Yes, it just has animations. What were the three industrial revolutions that led us to the fourth? Well, let's say the first industrial revolution, and to me, my watered down comprehension of this as I qualified to teach English, so I'm going to give this to you in the briefest format, is that we went from a space whereby resources were really input and output driven, i.e. if you are a farmer, you tend your farm, you've domesticated your cattle, and basically your resources are very controlled and finite. You have what is around you immediately and what is transported to you manually. If, for example, you wanted to get resources such as lumber to continue burning at your farm, you would basically have to have it wagoned over to you, correct? So the first industrial revolution comes with basically closing the loop or closing the circle of influence with which you require to go and overburden yourself in terms of resources. And I say that in terms of the first industrial revolution, which is mechanical construction of railroads. Now, for example, if you require lumber halfway across the United States to continue to build houses or railroads, you're no longer waiting for the laborious task of either finding it locally and then moving it yourself. You can actually build railways and have it expediently transported to you. And one thing Gareth made very clear to me in my training was that every time you have one of these industrial revolutions, it's an exponential increase in what you are able to achieve. Going into the second, now we're saying, okay, cool. If you were, for example, transporting coal in the first industrial revolution, you are limited to where that is burned to generate that power. But now with the invention of electricity, you are taking that burn, converting it into a highly transportable resource that you can then don't necessarily have to transport those resources anywhere. You can send that power across the nation, which obviously is prevalent today if you think about all the power that's currently keeping our lights on. The third industrial revolution is the invention of the semiconductor, because with the previous two industrial revolutions, you had a very strong man-made component, i.e. I need to be around to facilitate the driving of said train or the powering of said plants to power said electricity. What happens with the semiconductor is that you can program directly onto it instructions so that you don't have to be there to press said button to burn said coal at said rate to generate said electricity. You can actually program a tiny bit of material, which is actually quite brilliant when you really think about it, to achieve the pushing of the button for you. What happens then with that exponential increase is the more mundane systems we take away from man, the more advanced we can get in our collaborations, in our calibrations, which leads us into this fourth industrial revolution, whereby no longer do I necessarily have to just tell you, Mr. Semiconductor or Miss Semiconductor, to press said button, but try and come up with more efficient ways to execute certain key functions and crunch big data, which means that no longer is the mundane taken care of, but quite a lot of high order thinking is taken care of as well. For example, the artificial intelligence and the like. That is the why in a nutshell. With still about 10 minutes to go, I like to talk about my why. Coming from an educator's perspective is looking for child one and child two. Gareth, I don't know if you've ever seen this presentation, but I do touch on it quite often. And funnily enough, I did call or speak to Gareth today to confirm his story, because I actually wanted to say, how did you come across your coding and robotics really? Is it what I keep telling people? And luckily it is, which is fantastic. I think after working together for about 3-4 years now, it's always good to fact check. So child one, Gareth, basically, and I'm sure you won't mind me saying this because it is a prevalent, suffers from dyslexia, whether it be writing or numbers. The words tend to jumble. It's a very real problem, and we know, at least everybody knows, of 2 to 3 people who do suffer with that. So you're reading twice as hard, you're studying twice as hard, because things take twice as long to process through to make sure that you're measuring twice, cutting once. When Gareth used a laptop or a PC to actually read back to him certain academic literature, he thought to himself, okay, cool, wouldn't it be great if I had a career using IT, because then I would be at the computer all the time. In doing that, he discovered programming. And what's wonderful about programming is it either works or it doesn't. And he found this highly responsive. It's not like a paper that you write for English where you print it and the spelling errors are rife. If you compile code, it will bug test and it will tell you, you went wrong here. And this exponentially increased his ability to learn and his passion for coding in the space. In such a sense, Gareth, you've made this your career. It's amazing to see what you've done, and he's developed, guys, 90% of the curriculum that you see before you. And I think it's nice to champion him every now and again, because I do make a lot of fun of him. Child number 2, Rajesh Pasangili, the co-founder and CEO of Resolute Education, took a very different look at coding and robotics. He is not even first generation South African. I think he came across from India when he was around 7, and he had no idea what he wanted to do. He just knew he wanted to make a difference. Specifically, he looked towards education, and his dad said, look, I've got to be honest with you, if you're not going to be a doctor, you're going to be an engineer. So Rajesh was like, okay, fine. I guess I'll study engineering. But with these entrepreneurs and these creative types, already the juices were flowing. He actually started a mathematics academy to try and make a business out of his education, I'd say, pull and drive. And when he and Gareth started chatting about the excitement in involving themselves with robotics and coding, Rajesh goes, hey, what if we took the kids that I teach in the afternoons and you teach them coding and robotics on a Saturday? Thus, Resolute Robotics was born, which is absolutely fantastic. For me, having access to coding and robotics in the school means that you might have child one who the bug bites and they say, aha, this makes sense to me. This is so exciting. And they can run with it and actually join on to a potential career that they otherwise maybe would have completely overlooked. I know myself, by 12 years old already, you're pretty confident. Okay, cool. I'm not one of the tech guys. I'm not one of the AP maths guys. And in fact, we actually have a very similar story to one of our alums, Cable, who went through our own system through his school, South Downs in Pretoria. And at the end of it, though his core marks were not strong, robotics gave him the passion and the excitement to push through his matric, get redeemable marks, and then he's been involved with programming with us since then because he's shown extraordinary promise. Or your child number two, somebody who understands coding, understands its relevance, but then looks for ways that it can affect change in other aspects, whether it be business. I have a friend finishing his master's in international copyright law with specific focus on social media copyright law. I mean, that's a whole loaded problem that we didn't have a couple of years ago. And then we also like to talk about Rajesh's wife, who has gone into medicine. She is currently doing her placements, I believe. And she says, wow, Rajesh, if I could understand the machinery I'm using, how much more effective could I be at the work that I'm currently doing? At the end of the day, it is about coding literacy and achieving coding as a skill. I know there's some mathematics teachers in there, and some of you asked me where mathematics fits in the questions that you posted for this evening. I'd say it's almost as if you're asking about what's a fish without water. Realistically, if you think about algorithms, if you think about the numerology of just actual binary, watering it down to itself, sequencing, pattern recognition. I wanted to come up with a bit more videos for you guys to show you in terms of what can be achieved with the mathematics. And we're currently looking at projects where we gamify the mathematics process, for example, in space. I found sine, cos, and tan exceptionally frustrating as a student. But if you tell me that's a flight path of an airplane to try and navigate through let's say various mountains, suddenly I get really invested in my amplitudes and seeing how those execute. By definition, that fish without water scenario. What I do have is several different coding and robotics examples that we can always go through if you guys want to talk about how do I get my students buy-ins for them to see the bigger picture. But it is at this point that I intend to open up the floor for further questions, guys. So please just let me know. Otherwise, I'll continue to go through various different exciting options that you can then convey to your students to say, you are looking at military aspects, communications aspects, and all the like of the various different exciting fields that coding and robotics can take you. I don't know why I can't open the
Q&A. So Salashini, sorry, I'm probably saying this wrong, I apologize, is asking when will coding and robotics be fully fledged into all schools?
The intention is by 2025 for the government mandates. I always say rather be ahead of the curve than behind. Pilot, stress test, try out a few examples. No start is too small. If you start with a grade 4 group or a grade 6 group or a grade 8 group, I've had schools that have come to me in the past that say we want everything right now from grade 1 to matric. If you have the staff room that's ready to facilitate it, we have the stuff that's ready to facilitate it. But I'd say if 2025 is a projected mandate where it's going to be officially recognized and mandated into all schools, start small now until it gets up to pace. That way, even if it's postponed by a year or two, what's happening now at the moment is we've got a lot of schools that have some sort of coding and robotics and schools that are, I would say, not resistant, but slower on the uptake. And I always say I'd rather not be on the back foot. That also being said, devil's advocates here, don't rush to any solution. Really think through what you decide to integrate. Some stuff is always a solid start. If you're in the junior phase, Scratch block-based coding is a no-brainer for your littlies to just get comfortable with the space. I would say when you start to go towards your high school phase, try and look at the maximum return you can get on anything. Looking at the subject alignment, looking at the learning outcomes, really try to say, okay, cool, how can I diversify my offering so that I'm not pigeonholing myself into any one thing. Nothing against any once-off product, but you really want to have maximum return on anything that you invest with, especially in such a rapidly growing space where stuff gets outdated, relatively quickly.
Here's a very good one. Nkantla is asking, is robotics coding or coding is robotics?
I'm always terrified to say my opinion or my 2 cents when Garrett's listening, but in essence, coding can exist without robotics. Robotics cannot exist without coding. If you think about your own framework, we would be nothing without our brains. And if you believe in a soul or a spirit or just neurons, you need something that's quickly, rapidly firing information back and forth in these skulls of ours. So taking that analogy, the code is essentially the thoughts, the vehicle or the human is the robotics. You can teach coding without branching into robotics if cost is of a concern. There's a lot of free resources out there. There's a lot that you can achieve by doing some research or by contacting, somebody, not mentioning anybody in particular. But that being said, if you do go into robotics, you will have to understand some basic coding. And I think that's the brilliance of it, is seeing a circuit come to life that you yourself wired is so unbelievably rewarding. Within a year of working for Resolute, Gareth and Rajesh actually presented me with the autonomous rover. It's our grade 9 module, grade 8 to grade 9 module, around there. And they said, you actually have to build something if you're going to work here. And I thought I'd say, thank you very much. It's been wonderful. Here's my resignation, and I wish you guys all the best. I have to say, very comfortably, with a glass of wine in hand, Netflix on the TV, and a couple of hours to myself, I had Gareth, unbeknownst to himself, teach me through the video tutorials, to the point where I was sending videos to all my colleagues at the office and saying, behold, I am the latest engineer, and I will now run the R&D department in our company. So it really is rewarding. Try a little bit. You can pick up components through us or various providers. And I encourage teachers almost more than the students to get started, because you'll be so excited about what you can achieve yourself.
That's awesome. I want to start now too. Natasha is asking, what is the estimated cost to implement a basic program for primary school?
All right, so it's a super broad question, because we're saying how many kids, what curriculum, what licensing would you require, and what's your maximum, return that you're trying to achieve from that. I would say that if you're trying to teach 3 to 4 grades of a couple of hundred learners each, you're looking at little as, I think we're looking at 3K maybe a month across all those groups. So maybe 30 to 40 a year. You're also, depending on your acquisition, how much hardware do you want, how much hardware is feasible. If you have a really well-structured timetable, you could get a huge yield out of 5 robotics kits by running your kids through an IT lab. I always say to schools, when you offer IT at a school, you don't think, okay, cool, I've got 1,000 kids, therefore I need 1,000 computers. You think, cool, I will have a facility. I will run kids through that facility, and I will manage my hardware and assets to achieve it. I would also say that there's some unrealistic expectations that people have, where they want every kid must have a robot. If you can afford it, fantastic. I always recommend 1 robot to 2 kids in an ideal world, so you don't lose the interpersonal skills. Especially with what we've gone through in the last 2 years, you really want to make sure that we're still working on those soft skills, teamwork, collaboration, and it reduces your cost. So yeah, it really does fluctuate. I think we've developed an app at the moment that auto produces quotations, but for yourself, it really does depend on what you're ultimately trying to achieve.
Awesome. Okay, we've been flooded by questions, so I'm just going to start from the top. Cool. David is asking, the piloted schools, are they funded by the departments or by the government? Do you know?
So I'm not very privy to what I do know. I hear through the grapevine from various pilot schools that we work with and why they've come to us, because they're, I would say, maybe dissatisfied with the progress. It's very difficult to try and come up with a mandated solution for thousands of schools in the country at various different price points, quintile 5 to 1, and I don't envy the job. What I will say is that they are given some level of support and some level of content. I believe I've seen a rather large binder on the desk at one of the schools that I have visited. As far as funding goes, I wouldn't know. And as far as hardware rollout goes, I, again, don't envy the job of trying to guesstimate how much hardware a school of 2,000 kids would need versus a school of a couple of hundred. And I don't think there is a blanket solution as of yet. But I'd love to be proved wrong. If there are any pilot teachers on tonight, maybe letting us know would be really, really valuable for us to discuss, what does that serve?
Awesome. Okay. Melissa is asking, she teaches at a very poor school with limited resources. She currently runs an unplugged coding club at the school. Can she incorporate robotics with their coding club? And do you have any ideas on how to do this?
Absolutely. When we say unplugged, I'd love to know to the extent of, if any, hardware that you use. But what's quite cool is we're trying to, going back to Rajesh's why of trying to give back and trying to create something. He actually really started with the intention of doing some NGO type projects. We've actually soft launched and looking at a large scale launch of our own NGO foundation, trying to bridge the gap between schools that can and cannot afford coding and robotics so that nobody's excluded. But what is wonderful is there's a lot of paper-based solutions. In fact, our entire offering, or the spine of it, from grade 1 to 3 can survive in of itself without hardware, which is quite fantastic, using gamification and different resources, different exercises, start to prime your junior learners to think like programmers without actually knowing they're programming. If you think about writing down instructions for a pirate in a linear fashion, that's actually sequencing. Now, if there's a bug in the code or an incorrect instruction for the pirate to turn left when they're supposed to turn right, editing that code and writing in the new script is effectively debugging, but you build on those skills through those exercises. And there are a lot of really cool paper-based solutions or unplugged solutions out there at various different levels that you can explore.
Awesome. Yeah, guys, there are a couple of resources. I know Western Cape Department of Education is also working on some things. I just need to go find the bot that she mentioned for you. I'll put it up in the chat for you as well, which is a very nice for the basic stuff where you can work with it on your mobile device, on your cell phones. So yes. Neil is from Master Maths Florida, if I'm right, Neil. And he says, is KiCad or other circuit design programs part of the robotics syllabus? PCB design is a critical practical skill, he would say. For example, he has an RPI-based gate control program, but it is purely academic unless you can get the circuit put on a PCB. I assume PC board.
Well, I'm glad you would assume. I always joke that I've got 1 gigabyte of RAM. I don't remember all my colleagues' names. I don't remember all my friends' names. And I don't remember all of the terminology and the quick abbreviations. So what I would say, Neil, is that I'm going to take that into consideration and email back to you once I've chatted to, I call them my Oompa Loompas. I basically have a back room of R&D guys who are climbing the walls and developing all sorts of cool tech and curriculum to see if they could assist with addressing that or pointing out where it does align. I would leave that to the experts rather than me trying to thumb suck from all the abbreviations, but we can definitely help you with that.
Awesome. That's great news. So guys, that's emulator is called a B-bot emulator, and it's very nice.
Oh, the B-bots. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure you've mentioned it as well. Hey, Jonathan.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's something that I'm more familiar with because it fits in the 1 gigabyte and the B is cute with the push buttons on the back and some great input and output. So with that context being provided, Neil, if you'd like to ask him more, I would say explain it to me like I'm 5 question regarding the B-bots. We'd be able to maybe address that a bit better.
Okay, awesome. Then someone else has said, besides schools, with which other companies or organizations do you liaise, or are you completely independent? This is in relation to the packages and non-direct robotic content that are also covered in the class.
So I think in a broad stroke, the question is, do we collaborate in other spaces?
Yes. That one.
Fantastic. Yes, we have a wonderful CEO and entrepreneur / opportunity addict. I'm the firewall with which I say, okay, cool, let me focus on this. And then we will move on to the next thing. So yes, we do collaborate in various different spaces, looking at, the homeschooling network, individual students, looking at international opportunities, tertiary institutions, bridging courses. Again, the topic being everything robotics, it really is. Robotics is everywhere and can be involved with everything. I always say that at the end of the day, I preserve a lot of my particular time and attention to my schools, whom ultimately they are the ones who need to benefit the most and make sure that what we're doing is in line with what they require. But what's really wonderful about that is it sets up a great foundation for individual learning, for tertiary learning, because we've created such a strong foundation. So if you have any opportunities that I would say maybe a bit you may feel off brand, if I can't assist you directly, I can definitely point you in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Resolute is working with SMD as well. So we're looking to help get the Resolute Robotics kits into retail for individual.
There we go. Yeah.
So there's definitely.
Once again, with my 1 gigabyte, I'm not privy to what I can and cannot say, but I'm glad you said it. But yes, absolutely. Yeah. So retail is a good example. Yeah.
Okay. Your next question is, do you provide a holistic solution?
A holistic solution, the five-part solution I maybe alluded to earlier.
Yes.
I would need that to be unpacked. And yes, we try to basically be the one-stop shop and resource. So to recap those 5, and we're not without the slide in front of me, it's not about the hardware. We're not a retailer. Kasturi can maybe to attest to the fact that a lot of what we do can be covered elsewhere. But the core beauty of what we do is what has been developed around that wholesome solution. The kits that we've selected actually are ideal for the learning outcomes that we try to address, which we address through our curriculum and our LMS system, which is third point. Now you've got an LMS system with video-based resources, you've got curriculum, you've got our wonderful kits that best serve what we're trying to teach. Now the question is, who's going to teach it? We do offer teacher training at junior or foundation phase, at intermediate phase and senior phase, at various different levels and lengths to make sure that teachers who ultimately stand in front of the class feel that they are well equipped enough to navigate this new and crazy space for their students and for their schools. 5th, it is our support network. We always try to say that even though we're working with robots, we don't want to lose the human in it. And that's why it is nice to see familiar faces or talk to familiar people, because we're not going anywhere. We want you to know that you can pick up a phone and talk to myself, talk to Gareth, talk to Caro, talk to my IT experts, or talk to my academic experts, and know that you're not alone in piloting this. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, there's going to be 20 kids, 40 eyeballs looking up at one teacher, and they're going to say, ma'am or sir, what's next? And we want the teacher to feel like we've done absolutely everything before, during, and after, that they're supported in navigating this for the first time, just like we're navigating it all together.
Awesome. Chris is asking, what is the cost of a robotic kit for grades 7 to 9? I think you have 3 different solutions for 7 to 9, don't you, Jonathan?
Yeah, that happens to be one of the blend points, 7 to 9. Whereby we offer the advanced, which is first principles, the adept, and the beginner around 8 to 9 space. And then as far as the microbit goes, all the way up to the grade 7, and in some cases grade 8, that's really a trifecta of, depending on your guys or your students' comprehension of the space, we can really network or shop different solutions. In terms of direct costing, I'll be happy to send, it's quite nuanced, all the way down to the granularities of, a couple of courses that cost, a few hundred for 300 to 400 Rand via the website, or right the way up to our hardware. I think the most expensive of which, and some of you will know, the Raspberry Pi has shot up in the last couple of years. Our FET solution retails the high end of 3,000 Rand, if I'm not mistaken. And that's because we can't compete with international competition. Banks are buying up Raspberry Pis like hotcakes, no pun intended, because they're being used for cryptocurrency mining. So we do have to compete on that level. But luckily, using the Arduino microcontroller, you can pick one up for a couple of hundred Rand. It's exceptionally versatile and quite powerful small microcontroller that you can use right up to grade 10. There's no need to go for the super expensive option straight off the bat. That's for our kids who have then finished the advanced and really want to push themselves in the FET space.
That's awesome. I didn't know you could use it for crypto mining. So see, guys, it's always
you can use it for almost the Raspberry Pi is not a Pi, for those of you who don't know, because I was very disappointed when I found out. But the Raspberry Pi is a very powerful microcontroller. But don't feel pressure to buy any if you're an educator at the moment, because it's almost like saying that you want to learn to drive in a Ferrari F430. You'd probably want to learn to drive in the Figo and then work your way up to the Wranglers and the Rolls Royces. In terms of education and circuitry, the Raspberry Pi we're looking at your, S-class model cars. It's saying that, okay, cool, now that I've learned these basics, I want to do some really complex crunching. And if wired and programmed correctly, a Raspberry Pi can function almost as its own small computer, which is quite astonishing. It is a key term. It does get thrown around. Don't feel pressure to run and try and find them because they are exceptionally expensive right now.
Well, thank you for that. Also, guys, Raspberry Pi is not the maths Pi either, just FYI as well. And Klanta is asking, how can a maths teacher with basic Python programming contribute to coding at a primary school level?
You know what? I always say that you do not require prior knowledge in robotics and coding. So if you're a maths teacher with basic Python, you're already above, I'd say, 80% of the teachers who are being faced with this problem. And I know, I think we all know in the education space of teachers who specialize in one subject and end up in a completely different subject because life has a way of, I've got a friend who studied with me who's now teaching physics, and he didn't even take physics in high school, but he took the post that was available to him. So if you are a math teacher and you're looking at integrating or contributing in some way, shape, or form, I would say it's your drive already. The fact that you're here, the fact you're listening to me says that you're already excited about the space. That's what you need. Some basic training would mean that you would just understand the content. For me, a good teacher is always a good teacher, regardless of subject matter. So you're already doing a great bit. If you're looking at real practical knowledge of how to get started, start a club, make it elective, run it for a term. Don't even implicate hardware straight away. Try out some basic software courses, see if there's uptake in your school. Then with enough backing, either your SGB or your execs will entertain it as a in curriculum or a club, or your parents. Parents are wonderful drivers of change in school, sometimes for the good, sometimes for just some frustrations. But if you get buy-in from any of those, you can really start to grow. One of my first schools is now in their third year, and they're on 140 extramural learners. And then I have another school that offers coding and robotics in curriculum from grade 1 all the way through to grade 8, if I'm not mistaken. Then there's some schools that only offer, as a termly project. And out of the 150 odd schools that we're servicing, no two schools are the same. You'll have different notional hours. You'll have different goals for a club or in curriculum. If you're going to start small, and you can start quite easily.
Awesome. I think that answers some, but let's just continue. Do you offer any campaigns or open days for underprivileged schools?
We absolutely do. Please just get in touch. Email info@resolute.education. Let me throw this up while we all chat. If you guys want to take down my details, that's the wrong.
Can I put it in here? info@resolute, hey?
Absolutely. There we go. I'll also pop that up. So if anybody wants to email through to us or call, please do, or visit our website. But yes, we do open days. We do something called Steam Days as well, where Steam Day is a 24 hours, is a day experience of a condensed version of our courses. We have a foundation phase, intermediate, and senior offering, whereby it's 6 hours, shotgun course on everything you need to know at that space for robotics and coding. It's a wonderful event for your kids. We also offer watered down versions. We currently do one now that's almost, I'd say, 2 hours long. So it really is punchy and gets you through some grappling with some hardware and some code. Yes, we can absolutely facilitate that.
Fantastic. And then Tapelo is asking, do you guys have any resources to share ebook study guide for grade 7 coding and robotics?
We do. It is unfortunately part of my IP. So I can send you some demo lessons, I believe 4 or 5, before we'd actually use that as part of our licensing and part of our service that we do. We do an annual licensing model with our schools, in which case you're always getting updated tests, updated curriculums, updated calendars, updated resources. We're building our own virtual simulators. There's really, if you can think about it in the coding space, odds are Garrett's busy pulling out his hair over it because we really do want to be the one-stop solution for our schools. So I can share some demo resources with you, absolutely. So you can see kind of a taste test of what we do offer. And if you're interested in partnering with us thereafter, we can take up that conversation when it comes.
Awesome, that sounds great. Kashifa is asking, how do you get started if you're not a pilot school and you have limited financial resources?
again, you are not alone. The overwhelming assumption is that you see a big school, you assume bigger resources. You're like, you got 1,000 kids, they're all paying school fees. If anyone sat in an SGB or a budgeting meeting, it goes rather quickly, and you end up with a small little amount at the end that can be dedicated or allocated to certain things. So I would say if you've got minimal resources and you don't have any prior experience, or you're not a pilot school, remember the 150 schools we're in aren't all pilot schools. In fact, I would argue almost none of them are, because they would have told me by now. The ones that are, you can still pilot with us, because again, the provisions made in the pilots don't cover all bases in terms of resources, in terms of hardware. They really do a minimal amount, because they've got the overwhelming job of trying to roll out across multiple schools. So I would say that if you're going to start with that minimal resources, start small, start with a pilot. You can acquire 4 to 5 kits through us. Tell and I to say, okay, cool. That's going to serve, you can recycle 100 kids through a certain select amount of hardware and not break the bank. What we'll do is, if you do book a meeting with me or any of my staff, we send you several iterations of proposals, financing options, cost per head, cost per learner. If it really is an underprivileged school, we are, as I said, approaching the NGO space so that we can assist with acquiring funding and piloting schools through those initiatives as well. So watch the space. We are going with a launch for our foundation soon.
Awesome. That's very exciting to hear. Audrey says she's from the Northwest and one of the piloting schools selected by the departments. And she said training done by the departments. The expectation is that it will be sponsored as well, but she takes it that schools will be funded based on different quintiles. She's the head of maths and grade 7 technology in the quintile. I
always get super excited when I hear little smidges of what's happening with the piloting project. So the understanding is that some training is provided, and that the expectation is that it'll be provided with some level of support, but it just varies depending on quintile, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, she can't answer. She sent a message. All right, fantastic. Thank you for that, and thank you for sharing with that. For me, it is a massive mountain to try and climb, to try and create a best line of fit for all of these schools in terms of what they can achieve. Obviously, that's something that we're trying to assist with directly. But it is my hope that if schools are being piloted, that they do have a significant level of support, because I want to watch schools thrive in the space.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Neil has just sent some shorthand. So by PCB, he means printed circuit board, but I think you'll have to email him directly to answer all of those.
Neil, let's get in touch. Please email me and we can get on a meeting and we can sort you out.
And then Anonymous has asked, will the resources accommodate the Scribbler robot?
I will have to get back to you on the Scribbler robot. There are hundreds of products out at the moment, and I've got a very finite memory. I'm not familiar with the Scribbler bot unless I maybe see a photo. But what's cool is with the learning outcomes, they are done in such a fashion that you can find multiple correlations between some hardware that you may already have and what you need to achieve. I always go into schools with an open mind as to what they've already acquired. If you've already acquired something like the BBots, the Scribblebots, EV3s, drones, 3D printers, whatever you have currently, don't expect Resolute to come and say, toss that all out the window. What we do is we take a look in the stock, and sometimes it is a case of, unfortunately, this won't serve what you need to achieve with the curriculum. But more often than not, it's saying, actually, don't worry about it. That will be great as a resource for X, Y, and Z. And we integrate around it to make sure that we don't make you feel that some of your hardware is a lost cause. If we really can't integrate it, then what's great is repurposing it for a extramural, because then you don't want your kids who have gone to Tuesday's robotics class to go to Tuesday afternoon's club and do the exact same thing. So it's always nice to diversify.
So the next two questions are to do with courses. Do you offer any accredited courses? And then can you share information for teacher training as well?
Awesome. So we currently have actually a teacher training drive whereby it's a bit of a roadshow tour. They're currently in Potch today, I believe. So if you are interested in hopping on that, that's more of an individual teacher who's looking to participate in the course themselves. Otherwise, we charge teacher training to the schooling institution. And yeah, that tour is happening until, I believe, in September, maybe even October. So that means you can hop in on part of that tour for foundation, intermediate to senior phase. For some of my existing clients, I believe you're going to if you haven't been invited, Kasturi, if you're still there, to your free touch up, which basically just hop in and say hi to Chris and the team again. And then in terms of accreditation, we are SACE accredited. So you do receive a certificate if you participate in our training. And that's just wonderful for our teachers, which is quite cool.
Yeah, it's very, very nice. Rahima says, lovely. She has a robotics club in her school and she was worried she would need particular subject knowledge to participate. She's definitely interested in learning more in order to encourage integrated learning.
No, just a go-to attitude. You're halfway there. Yeah. I would say that that's actually fantastic, and I'm glad you're offering coding and robotics. And it's always nice to hear of schools that have existing programs running. For me, it's the schools that are completely against it. Please just chat to me. Let's look for the easiest way to get moving forward. No start is too small.
Awesome. Then Debbie says, where are you guys based, and could you offer courses for teachers in KZN?
Cool. So 2 things there. We are based in Pretoria. We do teacher training across the nation. So we do various tours, so we make sure that we can onboard. And then with our schools that join for the following academic year, we make sure that we, for example, drive out. We do a whole bunch of training in and around the same place. And then if you are a teacher who wants to participate in somebody else's training, you can be charged separately. Otherwise, if your school is willing to train a number of staff, we come and do the training at your school. And then specifically speaking on KZN, my team are there next week doing their own roadshow / sales tour to visit a couple of schools. If you'd like to meet them and demo some of our kits and see some of our solutions, please email me and I'll make sure they get in touch.
Awesome. Guys, I'm going to put Jonathan's email address into the chat function so that you all have access to it, okay? And then you can just contact him directly for this roadshow or any other information that you need. Lucy Siwe asks, are robotics only meant for teachers and students?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Are robotics?
Only meant for teachers and students. Is it only for teachers and students, or can anyone do it?
Anyone can do it. It's kind of like saying is art or is music or is mathematics only for teachers and students. Parents, other people in the industries. I'm looking at doing, developing additional modules for BCom students and BA students. You as a parent, I've actually given a few courses to parents to do Python. Python is big now to have on your CV just in terms of job applications. So no, absolutely not limited. What's wonderful with our teachers is you get access to all the courses. So go nuts and go through them. And if you don't have access to something yet, it's in development. But I always encourage, you will be shocked as somebody who's not, I was not tech savvy, still am not, still can struggle with some really basic computer stuff and then run to my guys and say, help me. But the fact is I'm actually doing my own video game development right now. I'm doing my own HTML course. I intend to steal more hardware from the office so I can build more stuff. You'll be shocked at how much fun you'll have, guys. Just try it. There's no harm in picking up a YouTube video even and just seeing the basics of video game development and take it from there. You'll be amazed at how much fun you have.
Awesome. It does sound fun. I'm very keen. Audrey says, can you share more information because she's currently in Poch and she wants to share it with her coding and robotics group within the district.
Oh, goodness.
Can
Audrey,
I hook you up by email, the two of you?
Cool.
I think that would be the best option.
No problem, no problem. I think they leave tomorrow morning, but we're going to be back through there. We basically twice a year, we're all over the country, so you're bound to see one of us.
Yay. Wanda says his school is also piloting and he's interested in attending more workshops.
Wonderful. Yeah, so that would be the roadshow, would be the first port of call. I think if you have 2 or 3 teachers from your school, you also get a free bot of some of our hardware. So I will send those details as well. Please email me if you'd like to be part of the tour or receive training at your own school. That would be awesome.
Awesome. Jonathan Tapella says, are there any websites that allow you to program and or build a robot virtually?
Yes. So what's really cool is there's a lot of open source, and open source basically means free to use, and you can copy and paste other people's code. You get programmers who are exceptionally good at programming themselves and programmers that are exceptionally good copy pasters, and there's no shame in either. So I would say what we use as a environment, Scratch, to the best of my knowledge, is free. So you can go take a look at that. If not, it's included in a lot of what we do. But that's more storylining and it's focused at your juniors. It doesn't really have a simulated environment. The first simulated environment we use is the microbit make code. So if you Google microbit make code, it will be one of the first links that comes up. Hop on that link and it will actually allow you to create your own account, your own environment, and then it actually has a simulated environment, so you don't need the hardware. Up in the top left, you can just start experimenting with block-based. Then there's a software as you get into electronic theory called Tinkercad, T-I-N for November, K-E-R-C-A-D, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. There are teachers on this chat who spell better than I do. Please help me. But Tinkercad is also free. And what Tinkercad allows you to do is full-on simulations of code as well as electronic theory with Arduinos. And in fact, I've got a picture on one of my 100 slides of the Tinkercad environment. Sorry, guys, I can't find the chat wherever I can drop it in. But Tinkercad is great for simulations. And then once you've gone on from there, I would say with video game development, there's various different options. But when by virtue of being video game environments, Unity and Unreal Engine come with their own piloting spaces where you create you get basically an X, Y, Z axis, and you can start to experiment with shapes in 3D space. That's getting a bit complex. Starts right the way back at block-based. If you get bored, go into the Tinkercad. There is a lot of simulation software available.
Awesome. It sounds amazing. Gian is asking, will the school you train at need a stable internet connection?
Guys, we are regretfully held to certain mandatories. I would say a internet connection is really preferable. Could we get by with training by bringing our own internet to you? Yes, but our LMS system is based largely on having internet connectivity. Even a really good cell phone hotspot has saved us in a pinch. But what we do when we partner with any school as part of our due diligence is we do a site inspection. So we'll look at your infrastructure, look at your hardware. There's no good in buying, 40 kits and then we arrive and you don't have computers that can actually upload to those microcontrollers. So regretfully, you will need to upgrade your internet, and maybe robotics and coding is the influence you require for an SGB or an executive committee to say, okay, cool, we need the right infrastructure to service this subject.
Awesome. Yes, guys, internet is the window to the world. Then Anonymous says they need some workshops in the Western Cape. When are you guys in the Western Cape?
I'm in the Western Cape the entirety of next week. So I'm available if you want to have a chat. But as for the workshops, you would need to arrange with my team and then they would book you in. They do several tours out, or they will come directly to you depending on whatever options or packages or pricing we commit to. So if you can let me know where in the Western Cape, I can absolutely arrange a visit just to come say hi and talk through our various solutions. Otherwise, I can patch you through to my team and arrange that you get some training.
Awesome, thank you. Zloshny says, thank you for an informative session. It's much appreciated.
Thank you, I appreciate it, guys. Yeah, always happy to help and always happy to be in these. And if you have any questions, now you have my email address, please just shoot them through. If I can't answer it, I can make sure that somebody in the office chips in and helps you guys out. So please feel free to email in at any time.
Awesome. And then, the questions are jumping in here. Natasha says, do you do training in Bloom? I think the answer is everywhere in South Africa. Everywhere.
Guys, I was in Lagos, Nigeria 3 or 4 weeks ago. We are setting up operations in the UK, in India. So if it's in Bloom, we can definitely make Bloom.
Yeah, that's not too far.
No.
Anonymous says UNISA MOOC, UNISA MOOC has great prior knowledge coding and robotics courses for free. So if anyone is interested, go take a look there as well.
Awesome.
And then Neil says, thank you. He really enjoyed the presentation. Gareth says,
thank you, Neil.
You are training in Cape Town from the 22nd to the 23rd of September.
Cool. Thank you very much, Gareth. That's part of the roadshow that he's alluding to. So glad I have a man on the ground helping me out. I'm sure he's texted me, but I don't know where my cell phone is.
Can find it after. For those who've asked for certificates, I have got them all in the Q&A. I can download the Q&A, so I'll email you all certificates tomorrow. Are there any other questions? I feel like my brain is going to explode from all of this information, but it was just so interesting. Thank you, Jonathan, for your time. We really do appreciate it.
I didn't get to show you guys everyone who's still on. I mean, we've got Boston Dynamic videos that Gareth has included in our webinars. So we're going to have to maybe have a second one where we can show you guys some examples, SpaceX, dancing robots, farming. There really is a lot that we can go through in terms of examples, but I'm glad that we actually ended up having more questions than presentations. So that's always fantastic.
It's very informative. Kasturi says, thank you so much for an awesome presentation. And Bruno says, thank you for the information, Jonathan. And Chabo says, thank you. See you in Cape Town.
Lekker, guys. Thank you so much, Kasturi. It's always a pleasure. I'm sure I'll chat to you again soon. Bruno, thank you for the thanks as well. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Hang on, I'm catching up. Okay, Neil says he's looking forward to another video. Another one. Okay, I think we've all got, everyone is saying thank you. Melissa says thank you very much. Yes, we'll send you your certificate as well. All of these questions get saved. Gian says awesome presentation, and she's looking forward to, or he is looking forward to part 2.
Cool. We'll start writing part 2.
Patience says very informative, and she hopes there will be more webinars like this. Givemore says see you in Cape Town, in KZN. And Debbie says thanks, Jonathan and Tal. It's a pleasure, guys. I'm so glad that we were able to pull this together for you. So yeah, awesome. Any other questions? I don't know if you want to pop it into the chat or here. I think Jonathan can see the chat more than the question and answer. I don't know why. You are a co-host. It's supposed to give you all the...
Now I can. It was when I stopped sharing my screen.
Aha, okay. Kerry, we will send you a certificate, no problem, and it's a pleasure. Awesome, guys. Laura, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you taking your time out this evening to join us. I know it was a long session, but I feel like it went by so fast. So, if you do have any other questions, you know where to find us. You've got our email address. I am in the office until the end of August, and then I will be on maternity leave. So the best to
everyone,
ask,
congratulations to Tal.
Oh, thank you. Best to ask Jonathan if you do have robotics questions. I speak maths, which is a form of coding, right? But
there we go.
There we go. Yeah, I was saying to Rajesh that coding that's simply a series of if-then statements, and it's absolutely true. So if you can basic math, you can code definitely without question.
Absolutely.
Diana says thanks a great deal. Elodie says she's looking forward to KZN.
Okay, awesome. I believe somebody did ask me for my slides. I am in a position to share them to Tapelo, so no problem with that. I'll share them through Tal, and then if you guys, maybe when you get your certificates, we'll also receive a link to the presentation.
Yes. What I'll do is I'll upload the slides to the Maths at Shop website. In fact, no, what I'll do is I'll attach them to the email address on Friday. So sorry, to the email on Friday. And then you guys, I can just download the presentation from there. So, and then David is asking, I'm not sure if it's relevant to us. He wants to know how much it would cost to set up a school website page, but I think that's more of a...
I'm happy to consult. That was my previous business. And I'd say that you'll get charged either minimal or extremely strong-armed. I'd say compare your quotes, get everything together. And if you really want my help on that, free of charge, just send me what you've got and I'll tell you whether or not you're headed in the right direction.
That's
or take our web development course. Yeah.
Yeah, create your own website. Hosting is reasonably cheap, guys.
There we go.
It's all good. Awesome. Okay, Marley, we will send you the presentation as well. So guys, I will send you a link to YouTube, and then you'll see an attachment button. So you just click on the attachment button to download Jonathan's presentation with all of the cool stuff in it. And then we'll definitely make a plan, I think, for January, if you're free, to do another robotics thing and get it.
I think I'm free in January.
We're booking you now.
There we go. Perfect. I got my first booking for 2023.
Hey, there we go. Awesome. Guys, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to end it off here. Let me actually stop recording. For those of you who are watching on YouTube and didn't get any links, you can always comment down below in the video and we will happily answer any questions for you.